Hello and welcome to Chapter 15 of Consumer Behavior. I'm Dr. Greer and I am so excited once again to be talking about these amazing concepts with you. And we're getting towards the end of the book, and what you're going to be figuring out is more and more about how to use this information as you become a marketer. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we can do with all this information is to actually apply it. So this chapter is about information search. And this is going to fit into our framework that we've been talking about this entire time. We're now on the far right side of the decision process. And this is one of those things that's going to allow a consumer to figure out what they're going to do in order to purchase. Now, we all do this. We come up with a way that we're going to go do a search. It's really funny. Just the other day, I was talking to my son about something, and he was telling me this random person on YouTube is who he trusts. I realized I'm very similar to that. There are people that I trust. Quick story. When I was looking for some information, right now I'm using some of the stuff at doTERRA that I'm using to build a live streaming studio, right? And so one of the things that I had thought about was, who do I trust? Where am I going to go to get my information on how to do this properly? Well, my boss came to me and said, you know what? I have a person that I would really, really trust. And I started laughing internally going, well, it's not Alex Lindsay, the guy that I know. And he goes, here's his phone number. Let's give him a call. And he said, he's a pretty big deal. His name's Alex Lindsay. And I was like, what? And I went from not being interested in the information to completely interested in that information search with Alex Lindsay, because he's a well-known person that knows a lot about the technicalities of live streaming, and I had done a lot of research, and so I was instantly in. So it happens even to me, is what I'm saying. It's kind of fun when we look for this information search stuff. So along this chapter, what we're going to be talking about is internal and external information search and the role that those things play in the different types of decisions that we're going to be making. We're going to summarize everything that's going on, and we're going to go through a lot of the information that happens in there. But when it comes down to it, what we're going to do is, how do we use these to help consumers make better decisions and hopefully decide on our product? And so that's where we're going to be going. So let's talk about the nature of information search. So consumers continually recognize problems and opportunities. So internal and external searches for information to solve these problems are an ongoing process. Okay. So every day something new comes up. Let's say at the beginning of COVID-19, we didn't have a really nice thermometer at our house. Now, I've bought lots of thermometers in my life. My wife somehow has lost them, but we didn't have one. So I went on an information search and found out very quickly there were no thermometers to be found. Well, after digging and finding some stuff, I actually found a pretty expensive thermometer that was no touch, that operated like an Apple product because I'm such an Apple fan, and purchased it. And it took 2 weeks to get to us, but we got one. And that whole process was like, okay, I don't know where to go for this, which would have been an internal search. An external search is when I'm like, okay, I need to reach out and find someone else to give me more information so I can make a decision on what I want. So an internal search is a search of our long-term memory. It says, do we know if there's a satisfactory solution? What types of potential solutions are there, and ways to compare possible solutions? So I actually, in my internal search, I said, you know what? I want a no contact thermometer because that's what I believe in my head was going to be good. What are the different types? So I had a gun one that I could shoot on my head. We had a little touch one. That was what we ended up getting. There's the ones that you roll across your forehead. I was just going through all those different things and saying, okay, which one would be good? Now, on my external search, I had to acquire some information because there was a very limited amount of things that were available. And I wanted it to be available for humans to be able to monitor their temperature. And so that was just an interesting little added piece. And so I had to do a lot of searching for that. Now, when I was doing that, I had to come up with an appropriate evaluation criteria. And how was I going to decide what was going to be the right thermometer? Now, I'll tell you that normally I would have thought availability would have been at the bottom of the realm, the bottom of that list. But in reality, because there were no thermometers, availability became one of the top criteria. It had to pass that it was available before I would go through and determine any other criteria. Now, I happen to find with that experience, the exact thermometer I would have bought even with everything available. But that was just an interesting one that it actually went to the top list as available. So let's talk about types of information that are sought. When we're looking for different types of information, things that we're going to absorb to make decisions, we as humans, we say, okay, what is the performance of each solution on each evaluative criterion? So it's like what exists, what's out there, does it fit into these things? Now your assignment this week is going to be to write a paper or a post on if you had a scale of 1 to 100 and you were looking for an apartment for a college age student, what would be the evaluation criteria? Like what would you weight these things? Would it be 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 on each one? Or is location going to be worth 30? Is price going to be worth 50? Like it's made up to you to talk about why you think those things. Now, the next question that gets asked here is, can a decision be made on this information? Now, I don't know about you, but I have scoured things before and I've gone through a lot of information. And in fact, to purchase a camera to do some live streaming with, not the one I'm on right now, but we have a pretty big podcast here at doTERRA, and I was looking to make it a video podcast. And so one of the criteria was, what camera do I want to purchase? And I went through this long and arduous, weeks-long process, and I ended up on a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Cam 6K. Okay, it was going to be an amazing camera. You could do all these amazing things with it. And I ordered it, it got shipped to me, and 2 days after it shipped, and I was about to be here, and then the next day, I realized that it did not have an autofocus. And one of the things that I'm trying to do on this whole thing was allow it to be a one-person run show, so that the person recording can just hit go, they can have a bunch of stuff right there, the camera does a lot of the focusing on it automatically, and lo and behold, that was a major criteria. And so even while it was being shipped, I got a return label. The box showed up. I just pulled off the old return label, put the postage label, put the new one on there, and just shipped it back. I didn't even open the box because it was that big of a deal that I had to be able to have that kind of operation with it. So can a decision be made? Yes. I don't have to look for any more information. If you can't make a decision, no, then you have to keep looking for more information. These are high intensity, I would say high production use decisions that we're making. These are we want to be, I call it high involvement purchases. We want to know more about it. Now, there's some purchases you're just going to get. There's other things that you will research and watch and listen and get as much information as you can to make sure that you make the proper one. So let's talk about types of information that are sought. Now, if we look at this, there's all potential alternatives. We have all the products, the brands. I'm going to go back to cameras. So I'm using a Logitech StreamCam 1080p. I have a Canon E50 or M50, I think is what it's called, an M50 right here for a podcast solution that we have. And then I have a Sony Alpha 7 III. That's another one that we have. We have a ton of really high-end cameras downstairs, and the answer when I was looking for cameras was, okay, is a webcam going to be good? Can it be a mirrorless camera? There was all these different features that I had to look for. What's the lens like? What's the size of the picture that it'll grab? Will it blur the background? There's all sorts of things that I was having to investigate. Now, we can go to our awareness set. Now, when we're trying to make this decision, like I was aware of Canon, I was aware of Logitech, I was aware of Blackmagic a little bit, I was aware of Sony when I started purchasing these things, but there's an unawareness set, so alternatives that the consumer does not know enough about, is what I would say. And I didn't know enough about Sony and Blackmagic, and so I had to do a lot of investigating. My camera knowledge is Canon and Logitech webcams, and so I have a lot of information on those things, but I hadn't explored like a mirrorless camera and stuff like that. So went through that, and what you do is you get some more information, and then you're going to decide, okay, from the information I have, what makes the right decision. So I'm going to use an example of laptop computers, and what we have is a group of awareness sets. So these are the ones that we know of: Lenovo, Apple, Toshiba, Compaq, HP, Fujitsu, Sony, Dell. Now remember, this is an old book, but it's okay because we're using the concept. But the concept is, okay, Evoke set. The ones that I know and I appreciate are Lenovo, Apple, and Compaq. The ones that I know potentially will work is this inert set, Dell, Sony, HP, and Fujitsu. And the inept set, well, the one I'm not going to even consider is Toshiba. Now, why is a whole nother thing that happens internally. So just remember that. It's an internal decision. But that's fine, because what we're going to do is we're going to look at how do we get that information. 5 primary sources of information available to consumers are memory, personal sources, independent sources, marketing sources, and experimental sources. So this is a lot of fun, and we can go through. I would say, I'm sorry, I said experimental. I meant experiential. So like if you go and you try Costco, you go to Costco and they give you a little hot dog piece, and you're like, oh, what's this on a toothpick? Oh, a hot dog. This is amazing. You're experiencing whether or not you're going to buy that hot dog or that spinach dip. And that allows you to have some time with the actual product. And that's a very rudimentary, basic decision, but that's a fun one that we can all identify with. So when we look at where we get our information, typically it either comes from internal, things that we have actively gone out and looked for or passively acquired over time, or we get external, which is we have to go look for that information and bring it in. Maybe we ask somebody, maybe we look up some marketing materials. These are all very important things that we can do in order to have the proper information to make a proper decision. Now, one of the places we do that is we go to the internet. Now, once again, this is a 10-year-old book, so these stats are from like 2011 or something like that. But the number of internet users in America was at this time dramatically less than in Asia and Europe. And now that could be a population thing, because in North America we only have, a certain number of hundreds of millions of people, versus in Asia there's billions of people. But still, that shows that there's a lot of people searching online. And so internet is a major search avenue. And as marketers, we try to get ourselves into that information stream. So we're always trying to SEO or figure out the words or the keywords that people are trying to look for, because we want to be injected in that conversation. Now, just as a side note, this is free information. I'm always saying this, which is there's searches that are negative towards you and your company. And it's really important to realize that if people are looking for anything, positive or negative, and you're not in the conversation, then other people are being able to define you as a company. So I'm a big proponent of being involved in all organic search that has anything to do with your company or product. If it's a negative conversation, you should be involved in it, and you should be trying to make it positive. You don't have to be like, oh, but listen, everything's happy valley. No, you can address the negatives and make it look like you're a realist, but you should always have something as part of the conversation. You should never ignore the conversation. And pardon my crass example here, but I think this is one I use all the time, and I just would say it. So when your children are growing up, you have 2 options. You can either talk to your children about the birds and the bees, or you can let someone else explain that to them. Now, as a parent, I would say I want to help define those structures and those concepts that are happening. But if I don't ever have a conversation with my children and I just pretend like they're not going to find out anything about this until I decide to bring it up, that's probably not going to work well. They're going to learn what they want about that information from someone else that's going to define it in a different way than maybe I want to phrase it for them, so they can have a healthy relationship or have the types of stigmas in their minds that I think would help them in the future treat that properly. Now, that's the same with marketing on your product. You can ignore that there's some negative feedback about you and your company. You can ignore that there might be some negative feedback about the product. But what's going to happen is you're allowing someone else to define what your company does or has. So online information search is out there for everyone. Okay, they're going to look for it, and there are different online sources that have different powerful effects on the consumer. I'll give you a great example. I was looking at a Subaru. I ended up not buying one, but I was looking at a Subaru, and I went to the Subaru dealership, and the salesperson was acting like he was the end-all be-all authority of Subaru. Like I didn't know anything and he knew everything, and he was going to educate me on this. Well, little did he know that I had gone on and done some online research, and he didn't know that the doors would lock without touching. You just touch it. You don't have to, pull out the key fob. He didn't know that it had CarPlay in it. He didn't know all these things that I knew because I had just done a little bit of external information search prior to coming. And so we should treat, in my opinion, let me preface that. In my opinion as a marketer, we should treat everybody as super informed on our product and not be uninformed ourselves, because there's so much availability for online research at this point that we have to be able to do that. Now, when we look at internet search activities, we have, how do people find stuff? Well, they use search engines to find information. Just the other day, I had a neighbor who was struggling with their car, and they couldn't get, every time they plugged their battery in, their alarm would go off as an Acura. And I said, well, you got to turn your key fob off. And I knew that because I'd had that happen before. And they said, well, our key fob's dead. And so I grabbed their key fob, I went over, got a battery, put it in there, and then the key fob wasn't paired with the car. So I looked it up online, and it just told me, oh, this is what you have to do. So I did it, I paired it, they plugged it in, the alarm goes off as soon as I hit the key fob. That was just finding information search, and I was looking up how do you pair a 2005 Acura key fob for a TL or whatever the car was. That's exactly what I did. I just opened up my phone and typed in that search query. A lot of people do that. A lot of people, in fact, I would say more people are buying products now online than used to, not by a vast majority. During this whole COVID crisis, I have had quite a few Amazon packages delivered to my house. In fact, my kids are getting really used to opening the door and having multiple packages come in every day, because I was ordering stuff for work, I was ordering stuff for personal use. It's just kind of fun to see that. So as we look at the nature of search using online search engines, we see that there are different levels for different things, but I would say all internet search over whatever gamut you want, whatever product line you're looking for, it's all growing by leaps and bounds. So, there are economic considerations for major motivations for searching online. I mean, you don't have to drive anywhere, you don't have to go talk to someone, but it can be an overload, and there can be too much information to make a decision. In fact, I often say, let's not give them so many things ahead of time that a consumer can't pull the trigger. And when I say that, it's because consumers want to know everything, but what they really want to know is, can they trust the person or the site talking to them? Now, this is free advice, and I'm going to say it quietly, because if you ever decide to start your own website, you won't even probably understand this, but if you can come up with the top 10 fears that someone has, the top 10 fears that they have about making this purchase. And they're not stupid fears. They're not like, oh, I'll buy the wrong product. It's, oh, if I buy the wrong product, my wife is going to yell at me for the next 3 years because she's going to say I'm an idiot and I didn't buy it again. I bought the wrong thing again. That's a real fear, okay? It's emotional, deep down, guttural fear. If you can come up with those things and you can address them in your copy or on your site, you don't say, oh, is your wife thinking you're an idiot? You don't come out and just say that. But you can say that at some point, like, have you ever, I'm just making up copy right now, so this isn't perfect, we'd have to redo it, but, have confidence that when you come home, the product will work, so you don't have to explain to anyone that you didn't do your research. Whole things like that. Like, that's a really vanilla way of doing it. But when they can feel like you have addressed it, they will trust you. And the easiest thing, I think I've said this before, the easiest thing to do online is take someone's money. It's just addressing and having them trust you enough that they believe that what you're saying is happening. So information overload can be a challenge. Now let's talk about different sources of information and places people can go on the internet. So the questions or the issues that marketers should be asking themselves are, how can we as marketers drive our information to consumers? 2, how can we drive consumers to the information? So either way. Or then 3, how, if at all, can online selling be utilized or integrated with existing channels like retail? Things like that. So there's different ways that we can push things. Now we can do banner ads, permission-based email, social media. I think that a lot of people just automatically go to social media or they put up a banner ad. I don't know if you're like me. I hate getting advertised to on the internet. I hate it. It just drives me crazy. And it's probably because I'm a marketer and I just don't want to have people shove it down my throat. So I'm very opposed to doing that as a marketer. And just when we look at this, when we look at offline media like print or TV, now TV is becoming a lot more online. So I don't even have a cable subscription. I use YouTube TV. And I pay for that, and I figure I don't want to have ads. So I love being able to fast forward through commercials. There's some ways that we can do some behavioral targeting as marketers based on click patterns. We have the Smart Lab at UVU. You can go over there and see like what do people look at on the screen when we put certain things up. But then we also have search engine optimization, SEO. And I think that's a pretty effective way. I am a big proponent of organic search results, and I think that's one of the best things you could do. Paid has its place, but I think that the company that has the best marketing and SEO strategy, as in not, I want to be very clear. I think that there's a lot of people that try to game SEO, and that can help you in the short term. But good content, good quality, good SEO optimization for organic search will always win, in my opinion, even if it loses in the short term. And it's because Google's set to get people the right information. And so they keep tweaking the algorithm. So you can win temporarily if you're trying to game an algorithm. And I'm not saying to not think about the algorithm, but I'm just saying like get good content for someone out there and people will come. That's my theory. So when we're driving consumers to a firm's information, maybe you want to bring them to a website. I was just having this argument this last week with a group, and I was trying to say they had all these things they wanted to tell the consumer when they came into a certain area. And I just flat out said, the consumer doesn't care about any of that. That's an ego-driven thing that you want to tell them. It doesn't mean anything to them. We have to pivot that information and give them what they're looking for. So I do think that's why like reviews help a ton, answering questions help a ton, talking about the product help a ton, because people are going to be looking for information like that online and they're going to want it. That's why it's usually very powerful. When we look into not just online, but mobile search, I'm a big proponent. In fact, at doTERRA, everything we design is on a desktop. And so whenever we do it, you come over and look at it on the desktop, and our front-facing team is just used to me now. I come up, I'm like, I don't even care the desktop view. Show me the mobile view. Because we know that the majority of people looking at our websites are going to be on a phone. And so you need to really start thinking about what does that look like? What's the experience like? One of the things that I'm in the process of doing right now is we have a bunch of ebooks. And I sat down with the team and said, hey, I want to get these ebooks put into ebook format. And our design team, who does all that, was trying to force some stuff in. So essentially what we were getting was a PDF that you had to zoom in and zoom out. I said, no, I want it to be a flowable, is what it's called, a flowable ebook, where the user has the ability to change the text, the size, the color, all that kind of stuff. It was a shift. It was a big shift for our design group to realize that they were no longer in charge of the content's display. So my team makes the content. They help us format it in a way that gives the user the ability to change the content. Those kinds of things I think are just super powerful. So that's just a big way that we need to do it. Now, the amount of external information search that happens. We have people, if you're going to go buy a car, that will research cars online. They will look at every car and driver review. They will talk to people that have it. They will go to 5 dealerships and test drive that car. They will talk to as many people as they can. Then we have other people that show up and just buy the first car they see. So you need to realize that there's a different level of external information search that people have. But a lot of consumers want to perform the least amount of research as possible prior to purchasing. But they do need to feel like they're comfortable with the answer. That's the important part. So there's costs versus benefits of external search. So there's market characteristics, product characteristics, consumer characteristics, situational characteristics. There's all these characteristics that kind of play into it. If you need a car tomorrow, you're probably, it's a situational characteristic. You're probably not going to wait that long. If you're me and you're going to buy a car, I always wait to the last day of the month, especially at the last day of the quarter, last day of the month. I will go test drive a car 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time. I'll have 3 or 4 interactions with the person. I'll have all my financing pre-approved, ready to go. The salesperson knows I'm going to buy a car. Now, I'm going to let you in a little secret. My last car, I violated my rule. I bought it on November 19th. And I wanted a new VW Tiguan. And I had been searching for a while. I tried to get it at the end of October. I tried to go buy one on Halloween. Didn't work out. I got to November, and I just been dealing with it. And I think that the car dealership had worn me down a little bit because I was just tired, and I knew I needed a new car. I was trading in my old car. And finally just got fed up, and I was like, I need something to drive in the snow. And so I wanted an all-wheel drive Tiguan. Now, those were my consumer characteristics, right? I let them kind of overwhelm the other characteristics. So I purchased the car. I got a good deal on the car. I negotiated quite a bit. A week after I bought the car, I got a phone call from the dealership, and it went to voicemail because I was in a meeting, but it was the head salesperson, not the one I had dealt with, who said, hey, we know you're interested. If you'll come down, I see this price that we offered you, which was the price I paid. We'll knock another $500 off if you'll come in. I was so mad at myself. I was so mad at myself because I pride myself on just whittling them down to where it needs to go, because I usually have a pretty good strategy on this. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. So it was a $500 lesson I get to learn that I had left it on the table. And I think if I had waited till the end of the month, I probably could have gotten $1,000 off it. So yeah, there's just little characteristics like that you pre-plan, you want to think about. Now, what's the benefit of external search? Well, we have all sorts of benefits that happen because we can start looking at alternatives and pricing and just all sorts of things that we can find. That's why external search is so important. And when we're looking at how to market to these information search patterns, we want to look at what type of decision influences the level of search and the nature of the evoked set of influences and the direction of the search. So we really want to, it just kind of comes down to this, figure out, okay, are we maintaining? Are we disrupting? Are we intercepting? Are we capturing? Where are we? We want to create a preference or an acceptance strategy. We were just having this conversation the other day about some essential oil companies here at doTERRA, and a big question I had was, well, if someone's going to buy a cheap essential oil, that's kind of like buying a really low end, no offense to Hyundai, but like a Hyundai or something. We're more of a Mercedes dealership for essential oils. Like, we take care of our customers. We have really high end oils. They always perform with the efficacy that we say they will. So do we even want to be advertising to a group of people that don't want those things? That's a great question to ask, is because it doesn't matter how much information search they do, they might not come after us if they're in the wrong group. So I hope you've learned a ton. I love information search. I think it's an important part of this, and I'm so happy you're in the class, and I will talk to you later. Thank you very much.